What's up, everybody? What is going on? How,
Hey,
how are you doing? Sophia and Alex back on to have a chit chat. How y'all doing?
Can't complain. Doing all right.
yeah.
Good, good. Yes, temperatures dropped down here in Florida, so it's kind of cold. So I kind of moved into a little different
What do you
office
call
over here.
cold, Scott?
Cold for me is anything below 50 degrees.
So y'all below 50?
I think right now we're at 56, but I think the
Man,
cold came is holding in this house, man. It's like holding in. It feels like 30 degrees in here. So I got the heat cranked up and trying to survive the cold weather.
yeah, it's like in the high 30s and mid 40s at night here, and daytime been around 50s. I want to
Yeah,
say,
same here. Same
yeah.
temps. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, everybody, we've got a great topic coming up about transhumanism. Now, one thing I want to say is that one guy, when I was advertising this, was I think he was thinking we're talking about transgenderism, and he was asking me, "What is the problem with transgenderism? You have a problem with trans people?" And I thought it was a joke, but then again, I'm thinking maybe some people don't know really what transhumanism is, which is why we're going to talk about it. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to address something with Sophia because it came up. Somebody who really put Sophia on blast yesterday in a Facebook group called The Fence, Fight on the Fence. And someone who's actually been on my show before. We've had discussions before. And anyways, the statement was pretty much that Sophia is kind of ignorant and illogical and emotional and a black woman, typical black woman, all this sort of racist sort of language. And I thought it was kind of a joke, but we had a discussion about it, and it actually was a little bit more serious with a little more history behind it, which I thought was kind of weird, that somebody would actually publicly try to disgrace my partner, man, like that. Like, I'm like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. So I wanted to let Sophia speak for herself on that issue really quick before we jump into it. And because I invited him to actually call into the show and
Hmm.
discuss this stuff, and I'm going to put up a backstage link. So if you want to come into the show and discuss it with us, you are more than welcome because we're all about being open and honest, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna get it out in the open. We don't like all this backbiting and keyboard warrior type shit, right? So we're gonna be like in your face with it. So if you want to bring it there, come on through. And also anybody else who wants to join in the conversation, you're more than welcome. I've got the link up right now. But without further ado, go ahead, Sophia. Let them know what's up.
Well, first of all, thanks for having my back and letting me know about this. But I know exactly who this guy is, and it's been a few years. He met me in the fence because I used to be in that group. I'm not anymore. Anyway, this guy, I guess, had some kind of crush on me or whatever because he was like constantly chatting me up. And I guess I did become friends with him after a while. And everybody that kind of knows each other in the fence kind of has this little clique going on. And we'd all be calling each other and stuff every now and then. And me and him exchanged numbers, and he was like, "Oh, I really like you, and you're not your average black woman, whatever that means." I think he was referring to I had, I had a lot of conservative views, and he was like, "Oh, that's really refreshing, and yeah, you look like you keep really good house, and you know how to cook," and he was always complimenting me and saying how he likes me or whatever. So we talk and call each other every now and then. And then there was times where he would get drunk, and when he would get drunk, it's like he felt so comfortable to speak to me. about everything that Rudy in
Go
the
ahead.
garage.
Go.
So anyway, uh, he started telling me some wild stories that to me didn't seem right at all. And just to make it real brief, he had this picture of this little girl, and he said she was 9 years old. She was his best friend's daughter, and he got to saying how this girl came on to him and stuff like that. And I'm like, came on to you how? You mean like sexually? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, did you let her dad know? Because that's usually a sign of something's going on with that child. Somebody may be touching her. And he was like, oh, hell no. And he went on his rant about how black women are sexual as soon as we come out of the womb because we're just sluts and we attract that type of attention.
Mm,
We bring this on ourselves. And I thought that was very
wow.
odd. Okay. I thought it was odd that he would see it that way because that's a 9-year-old girl. And, to me, that was a red flag. But I didn't really say anything like the icing took the cake when he told me another story about another girl that supposedly ran away from her home because her mom's a piece of shit and her mom's like a neglectful type of mother and
Hmm.
dealing with some abusive guy. And supposedly, hold on, what is going on? Anyway, one day supposedly she popped up at his house and he let her in and she dropped her pants. And I'm like, what? And supposedly because she was showing him that she's on her period and she felt more comfortable to talk to him about her period than her own mom. And then he went and bought her pads and tampons and shit. And he was giving her rides to school every day. And she felt all proud of it and would let her friends get in the car and stuff. And it just didn't sound right. And one day I was just like, man, you sound like a fucking,
Hmm.
And that's it. I mean, I can't prove that he ever did something like that, but he sure as hell was telling some questionable stories. And I don't think he realized that he was sort of telling on himself. Plus, I don't like how racist, like downright racist he is. He just, it's not even, he's just racist. That's all there is to it. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there is to it.
I feel you, man. That sounds crazy. And I've seen some of his posts, and some of them are kind of like racial jokes or whatever, which I don't see it's offensive. No one really got offended by it. Like all the black people that are in the group would like or laugh with his joke or whatever. So, but it's bad because some people say, well, just because you say a racial sort of joke doesn't make you racist. It just means you know how to make a joke, and you can joke about yourself or joke about others or whatever. Which you want to believe that's the case. You want to kind of feel that way, but people like him, that throws that whole theory out the window because if they start they kind of make the case for like these virtue signalers and the people on the left. See, he's a Trump supporter. See, they're all racist. See, these conservatives, they hate black people. He's just another shining example. And it's like, stop doing that, guys. Like, just be a person. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all know race doesn't come in any particular brand of politics or beliefs, but when you do that, you just kind of paint a bad picture. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
mean, to
spoke.
me, to me, that guy is just trash.
Hmm.
A failed fucking human being who lets out his anger about his unresolved childhood trauma because of an absent father and a mom who dated a black man. and the dude's still disgruntled about it. This is all stuff that
Mm,
he told me himself, and I don't really pay people like that any mind. And so the fact that he would bring me up after all those years unprovoked, because I have no dealings with this person, I'm not friends with this person. um the fact that he's bringing this up years later unprovoked, I mean, that should tell you something.
yeah, yeah. But
Maybe this
maybe
person
this
could
is.
benefit from transhumanism, and
I was just about to say that maybe this would be a perfect bridge into the conversation because transhumanism is kind of like an antidote for human failings, right? It's supposed to be. I was gonna pull up really quick, just a really quick definition of transhumanism
Mhm.
from AI, just to get like a general definition. But it would say transhuman. Well, maybe I'll share the screen. Would be a better thing to do. Hold on, and we can look at it together. So yeah,
Got some music today.
transhumanism. Yeah, something to keep the consistency here. So transhumanism is a philosophical and intellectual movement that seeks to improve the human condition through the use of technology. Now, in that general view, we all sort of engage in it, right? Like we all go to the doctor, we take medication. Um, how do we define technology? I mean, meditation is a form of technology. But I guess what we're talking about is sort of the like kind of like here the technology part of it where it says transhumanists support the use of technologies like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, and cryonics. And that's the part that we want to discuss and some of the philosophies behind it, right? So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
anyways, I'm gonna let you open up with it. I know we do have a video. I've got it queued up right now, so we can kind of go through it. But I'll let you give your take on that, Alex and Sophia. Y'all go right ahead.
Well, would you like to start?
um sure, I guess. Well, to me, it's a matter of, it comes down to that a lot of it could turn out to be unethical. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
There's a thin line between, using technology in a good way, but or using it to cause more harm than good. And so that's kind of where I'm like, this may not be the best idea. I'm more into like natural stuff, natural evolution and things like that. Not to say that we shouldn't have any kind of technology, but I think some of it is just crossing the line when it comes to
Mm,
replacing the human soul with artificial intelligence and believing that you're still going to be you. I don't think that's how that works, and you would be something entirely different. I don't think you would even exist at that point. So
oh
what are we
yeah.
really doing? Are we giving away our humanity? Are we giving away the human spirit, what we actually are beyond this body? You know what I mean? So that's kind of my issue with it.
Mm. So you're
I
kind of like
like the
looking at
idea. Oh, go
so
ahead,
like the
Chuck.
soul is the essence of you, and you're kind of losing your essence or your soul as a result. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, because the more you depend on that stuff, the more you actually lose yourself. So go ahead, Alex.
Uh, Personally, I like the idea of imparting my school of thought onto a machine for it to have to suffer through the mental processes that I go through.
Mm.
No, but I
Misery
don't really
loves company.
believe. Yeah, yeah. I think that'd be neat to program a machine to think it's me. No, but on the real, I'm just joking. I don't. Maybe there was a time when I considered the idea and thought, oh yeah, this might be cool or whatever. But throughout the years, just learning and experiencing life, I got
Oh, I think we're cutting out.
my perspective on the matter, and I decided that, all right, uh, so, so yeah, I was, I got to thinking that I just don't really know
Mm, the audio is really
if,
chopping up on my end.
okay,
We've got robot voice going
how,
on. Are you a transhumanist? Are
uh,
you a
uh,
robot? Uh, 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 uh,
brown
uh.
cow, brown cow.
All right. So, we kind of lost all of that because it got really
Uh,
choppy.
so
Mm.
yes, I am a robot. I have changed my mind in the matter of a couple of minutes of lag, and I'm now fully a robot.
There we go. Now you're starting to sound like a human again.
Ironically.
Ironically, wow. So what? So while everything's clear, let me just provide a little pushback. I'm going to play the devil's advocate for a second. So
Hmm.
what really is wrong with trying to use technology to maybe become like this perfect human? What sort of unethical issues do you think come up with that?
Um, well, I believe that at a certain threshold, transhumanism uh, kind of naturally follows a logical progression to post-humanism, to then reaching the state where the human existence is considered obsolete and a I guess like a threat or a burden to the post-human society.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And
What do you what?
there are other things that we're experiencing along the way on this journey where we can kind of see that you know things can be done, like mistakes can be made with the best of intentions.
Mm,
Take for instance um, uh, genetic modification, gene editing, right? um, I mean, you could say that maybe there's some people that just want to do it to exercise their power and like flex their knowledge and their technical skills. Um, but I believe that there's a fair amount of, there have been a fair amount of individuals involved in these endeavors with the best of intentions, thinking things like, oh, we will make our food more productive. We'll make our food more nutritious. We will uh, be able to essentially cure diseases that have plagued our species for however many thousands of years.
mm-hmm.
um, and so I do see the good intentions behind it, and I suppose you're right that arguably there have been some things that we've benefited from. However, I believe that we are now crossing that threshold of where the benefits kind of start to taper off, and we're seeing more of the adverse consequences.
Mm. So so basically the adverse, the negative consequences is what makes it sort of unethical. So just just hypothetical, in a perfect world, not saying it is, but just to kind of like a little street epistemology question. If there were no adverse, unethical repercussions from it, would it be wrong, in your opinion? What do you think,
Um,
Sophia?
Hmm. The thing is, there are repercussions, so so
Right.
I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, exactly. That's what makes it wrong. So okay, so that makes sense. So I mean, I
The
agree
thing
with
to
that.
me is the thing to me is okay. Let's evaluate this. It's not
Okay.
really about wrong or right here, right?
Mm.
Because whenever we make a decision, we try to make a decision based on whether or not the outcome is going to be destructive or beneficial, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, we think that we're going to benefit from pretty much a fix it all pill, right?
Mm-hmm.
No longer suffering from mental conditions, no longer suffering from physical illness and things like that. But the thing is, what transhumanism leaves out, in my opinion, is they leave out the actual work that needs to be put in by the human to, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but to promote good health, to prevent illness and things like that. Like there is a lack of accountability for our own actions. And so I'm going to explain that with a small little example, if y'all don't mind.
Go ahead.
Right.
So this lady, she believes in transhumanism and technology, and you know, medication is a form of technology, like we said. And she's like, well, I have insecurities and I don't like that about myself. And I know that these insecurities are essentially not me, but they're there and I don't want it. So I could take some antidepressant or some kind of fucking whatever kind of psych med, and then it's going to improve me. And now I'm a better person. So I'm the type of person, I'll say, let's evaluate that. So you could
Mm.
take a pill that will cover up your symptoms and trick you into believing that the problem's gone. But then when that medication wears off, what's going to happen? Reality is going to kick in. So wouldn't it be better to tackle the problem at its core and say, well, maybe my insecurities are trying to tell me something about me. What is it trying to tell me? Where is it coming from? So you as an individual have a responsibility to yourself, first and foremost, to address these problems that come from within and not without. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we're too quick to blame everything on external forces and circumstances rather than saying, okay, I'm not going to ignore this feeling. I'm not going to ignore these issues. I'm going to look at this and see what it's telling me, what's going on with me. And then I believe you can successfully, address these things, possibly even eliminate it by working through it. And then you ain't got to worry about it coming back either because you worked through it. You got rid of it. And that is a form of evolution. That's a natural way to evolve. So that's why to me it's not really a matter of wrong or right. It's just what would have the best results in the end. Transhumanism sounds good theoretically, but is it really?
Right. Right. And my own thoughts about the matter is like we all sort of engage in tools and technologies and making life more comfortable and easier, but we always have a limit. Like there's always ethical concerns, like when it comes to like cloning, and you see all the problems with cloning and how that's kind of backfired. And then it's just the whole idea, I was lean more towards, I'm sort of agnostic when it comes to a lot of different issues, but especially when it comes to ontology and things like that. But one of the things that kind of keeps me skeptical is I always, just as a thought, I used to always think, well, if we die and we go to heaven just to live a blissful life forever and ever and ever, what's the real meaning in that? Like, what's so great about that, right? Like, I can't imagine how it could be. Like, I'd always imagine like the whole God question, right? Like, if you're a God and you live forever and you have no challenges in life and you have nothing to live for, you have nothing to strive against because you're perfect and you're complete. There's nothing to complete you. You're just there. Where comes the value and meaning in that? And so I always thought, well, maybe the sort of, I guess, the Buddhist or Hindu vision of God would be like, well, that's why we exist, because God pretty much wants to know himself, or the universe wants to know itself. And so it fractals off into different beings that are challenged and have all these challenges and room for growth and space for growing and suffering and, you know, the good, the bad, and ugly, and everything in between, sort of thing. And when you have that sort of striving, it gives you meaning, it kind of gives you something to fight for. And it just seems like, because I mean, even a Christian would tell you, well, the reason evil exists is because it allows for good to exist. If there's no evil, if there's no suffering, if there's no pain, then wherein is our ability or even need to be virtuous and good? Goodness is like saving a child from a burning building, for example. But, if you get rid of all the burning buildings, then there's no need to save children from the burning building, right? And if you can just do that completely in every little aspect of life, then there's no challenge, there's no real, what are we talking about at that point? And so Christians say, well, that's the reason for evil, suffering, and everything like that. So when you apply that sort of logic to the transhumanist idea, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get rid of everything. And it just seems like, and then number two, is it even possible? Is it even really realistic to make that happen? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you would have to convince me that your brain is consciousness, because simply uploading someone's brain into an, immortal machine, that's not proof that you still exist unless you can prove to me that your brain is consciousness. And I believe that science has already disproven that.
Yep.
So what would you be uploading? You'd be uploading a history of the person you once were, and then that thing lives on perpetually without suffering. That's just a machine with your memories, and that's it. So yeah, you'd have to convince me that your brain is actual consciousness. So
Right. That makes sense. It kind of reminds me of that identity problem analogy. It's like, you remember in Star Trek when they used to beam me up, Scotty, and they used to beam down to a planet. Well, the way it actually works, and theoretically, the way it was supposed to work is when you get into that device that sends you, you're making a clone of yourself. So basically, you're destroying all your atoms and recreating it on the other side, on that planet. So you're reassembled, right? But suppose, let's say, Captain Kirk was still on the ship, and and he somehow sent his atoms, like made a clone of himself, sent those atoms to that planet so Captain Kirk could do whatever while he's still on the ship. Well, which one really is Captain Kirk at that point, right? And it's a
that's like,
question of identity,
yeah, it's like a clone. And I thought that too. Because if you're only like uploading
Oh,
Distorted.
you're getting a distorted feedback somehow. Right.
Uh,
Uh oh.
Shitty technology. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
um,
There, you're clear now.
we
You're clear.
we're
Cleared up.
good.
You're good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I thought that too. Like, if you upload someone's brain, and which consists of, how this person thought when they were a person, the thing they identified as, John Smith or whatever. Um, it's like reading a history book about John Smith, but is that really John Smith, or is it just copied information? Like a clone, which is what a clone is.
Right.
It's just a copy of something else. But is a copy the actual thing? I mean, when you're standing in front of the mirror, you see a copy of yourself, but that's not you. That copy is just a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm. And it's like the minute the clone decides to move right or left or start creating their own path, they start creating their own memories, their own experiences, and so they become essentially a whole other person, right? So it's like, so are you really made up of atoms? Is that really you? So it gets into the thing about what really is you at the end of the day anyway. So when you think about this transhumanism idea of uploading consciousness into a machine, well, what are we talking about? Are what's being uploaded? Me? If I'm not my atoms, if I'm not my memories, if I'm not my thoughts, then what is really being uploaded? Just some static data set? And then it becomes, and then even if it could start deciding and experience on its own, would it be me that's really experiencing stuff or just a whole new entity? Because actually, in my opinion, I sort of lean towards the Buddhist view that the you, the self, is kind of an illusion. There really is just an experience. And the experience is eternal. The experience is just kind of like a silent observer of everything that ever happens within any sort of sentient being that has the capability of remembering their experience or observing their experience, but what they're observing is the experience. And that experience is totally separate from your memories, your thoughts, and your modes of consciousness. So it's just the bare, raw consciousness that's just there. And it's fundamental, before any of the thinking and the suffering and the pleasures and all that, the observing, all of that stuff is kind of secondary to the experience itself. So you're not just, how do you upload an experience itself into a machine? You can't. You can't. It's nothing you can, it's just going to experience or it's not. It's either going to be capable of experiencing or it's not. And then where does that leave the identity of the computer that now has that ability to experience and think and observe its experience and stuff like that? It becomes a whole other person. And even that is sort of like a semantical label we put on things, right?
But we
So,
don't
like,
even know if that's possible. We don't even know
exactly.
if
Very
that
true.
thing would be able to be conscious.
That's right.
And for sure, a machine intelligence programmed with the memories and thought processes of a human being still would not function the same way because we are our consciousness is electrochemical. Like we have chemicals that are flowing through our bodies, and not just the neurotransmitter chemicals. We also have hormones flowing through our bodies that make us feel and think the way that we do. Now, a machine could kind of emulate that, but would it actually be able to experience love, experience joy, experience sorrow, experience frustration. You know,
Exactly. And that's what I would say is the human spirit, or, the thing that makes us conscious. Because, like, for example, it's some of the most unfortunate people who had the most unfortunate events happen to them, some of the most broken souls who inspire us the most. And what does it mean to overcome something? What does it mean? It means to be able to evolve, to be able to
Yes.
say, hey, there's an obstacle that's making it really hard for me, but I can overcome this obstacle and evolve beyond it. That's why
Oh
we're
man.
that's why we're inspired.
Woo.
That's why we're inspired by it in the first place, because we have this innate knowing that we have to evolve. So
Oh
if
my
you have
God. You
if you
just
have much
dropping knowledge, man. That is Jewel. I'm sorry to jump in on you, but you were just speaking to me right now, man. That is keep on, man. Keep on.
I don't know, I just flow from the heart, I guess. But what, a machine wouldn't have that. It wouldn't be able to inspire others. Where's the inspiration? Without inspiration, there's nothing left, like, for me at least.
Yes. Where's the struggle to be conscious? Where's the let me share this video because it actually goes into exactly ver, almost verbatim what you just said, and it's talking and it's using the very cells that make our brains up as an example of that. And it's so true what you just said, or at least it really resonates or coincides with what biologists are already saying. So check this video out. This is really talking about that same thing. Can you hear it okay?
People tend
Yes.
to think of intelligence as being of two kinds. There is the quote unquote real intelligence, which is what we are supposed to have. And then there's this idea of a collective intelligence. So swarms of bees, colonies of ants, shoals of fish, and so on. And people tend to think of those as radically different things. But the reality is all intelligence is collective intelligence. And this is because we are all made of parts. So you and I are collections of cells, and these cells, including neurons and various other cells in our body, have many competencies. This is because they were once separate individuals by themselves. They were unicellular organisms with all of the skills needed to survive in a complex world. And that journey that we all took, those progressive steps by which we construct ourselves, we construct our bodies, we construct our minds, that journey is maybe the most profound question in all of science. I'm Michael Levin, and I'm a developmental biologist at Tufts University. Developmental biology is maybe the most magical of all sciences because you get to see with your own eyes that journey that we all take from physics to mind. We all start out life as an unfertilized oocyte, and then slowly, gradually, step by step, that oocyte turns into a bunch of cells that self-construct an embryo, and eventually that embryo matures and becomes a large-scale adult. In the case of a human, it will be an individual with metacognitive capacities and the ability to reason, but we all have our origin in that chemistry and physics of that initial oocyte. And the magic of developmental biology is that there is a mechanism by which all of these cells get together and they are able to cooperate towards large-scale goals. This is the notion that biology uses what I call a multi-scale competency architecture, which basically means that we are not simply nested structurally in terms of cells, which comprise tissues, comprising organs, of bodies, and then ultimately societies and so on. That's obviously true on a structural level. But more interesting is the fact that each of these layers has certain problem-solving competencies. Each one solves problems in their own space. So cells are simultaneously solving problems in physiological spaces and metabolic spaces and gene expression spaces, and tissues and organs are solving those problems. But for example, during embryogenesis or regeneration, they're also solving problems in anatomical space. They're trying to navigate a path from the shape of an early embryo or a fertilized zygote all the way up to the complexity of a human body with all of the different types of organs and structures. So the competency architecture refers to the fact that all of the parts inside of us and inside of all other creatures are themselves competent agents with preferences, with goals, with various abilities to pursue those goals. and other types of problem-solving capacities.
Did you just hear what he said, man? Every little part
Yeah,
of you has its own little struggle in life and fight to become what it is. And all of those little people inside of you, little beings inside of your being, are creating you, which is just really what Sophia you just said. Like, how can you just put the complete done work into a computer and expect it to be the same being? Because there has to be some sort of evolution. Like that's the engine behind intelligence in a person, right? So that's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's just hard to
exactly.
imagine
Like
if that's how
that's
nature works.
there's no work that has to get put into it. It's just already done. It's prepackaged.
Yeah, this I don't know, but let's continue.
What evolution has given us is this remarkable architecture where every level shapes the behavioral landscape of the levels below, and the levels below do clever and interesting things that allow the levels above not to have to micromanage and to be able to control in an interesting top-down capacity. One of the most important things about this emerging field of diverse intelligence is that we as humans have very limited capacity and finely honed ability to see intelligence in medium-sized objects moving at medium speeds through three-dimensional space. So we see other primates, and we see crows, and we see dolphins, and we have some ability to recognize intelligence. But we really are very bad at recognizing intelligence in unconventional embodiments, where our basic expectations strain against this idea that there could be intelligence in something extremely small or extremely large. People often criticize this approach by saying, well, then anything goes. If you can pick up a rock and say, I think this rock is cognitive and intelligent, there's a spirit with hopes and dreams inside of every rock. That's not what this is. This is quite different. As an engineer, what you have to do is you have to come up with a way to look at a particular system that doesn't overestimate its intelligence or underestimate its intelligence. If you treat complex animals as if they were clockwork, you're going to miss everything that's important and exciting about how they work. If you treat a clock as if it had a complex intelligence, you're going to waste a lot of time. But getting it right is fundamentally important. And so you have this spectrum where the engineer has to pick the right level for the right system. And it's critical not to then say, well, that doesn't sound like human intelligence. Right, we're looking for the basic minimal version. So I think it should have two things. The first thing it should have is some degree of goal directedness, some ability to take different paths to get to the same goal. So this is William James's definition of intelligence. And it has to have some ability to undertake actions that are not completely determined by local circumstances. So you start with all of that, and systems that have scaled up those basic, very fundamental non-zero levels of agency, we call that life. So it is a spectrum, and I think that in this universe, it goes all the way to the bottom. It's very hard for people to think about these unconventional kinds of intelligences that may be either too large or too small. And of course, they often work in other spaces. So we're good with three-dimensional space, but imagine if we had a primary sense of our own blood chemistry. If you could feel your blood chemistry the way that you currently see and smell and taste things that are around you, I think we would have absolutely no problem having an intuitive understanding of physiological state space, the way we do for three-dimensional space. I think that we would immediately be able to recognize our various internal organs as intelligent agents navigating that space and solving these kind of problems, all the various things that happen during the day. And here's one of my favorite examples of problem solving in physiological and transcriptional spaces. So we have these worms, these are planaria, these are flatworms. And if you put these flatworms in a solution of barium, barium is a non-specific potassium channel blocker. It blocks the ability of these cells to exchange potassium with the outside world. The cells really don't like it, especially cells in the head, because the head is full of neurons. Neurons love to pass potassium. And so what happens is that overnight their heads explode. Literally, it's called head deprogression. They literally lose their heads. But if you leave them in the barium, within a couple of weeks, they grow back a new head. And the new head is completely barium adapted, has no problem with the barium whatsoever. We said, how could this be? We looked at the original heads, the original naive heads. We looked at the barium adapted heads, and we simply did a subtraction and asked, what are the different genes that are expressed here? And we found out that the barium-adapted heads have just a small number of genes that were turned on and off to allow them to adapt to this novel stressor. Now here's the amazing part. Planarian never see barium in the wild. There's no evolutionary history of knowing what to do when you're hit with barium. This is not an ecological stressor that they normally have to deal with. So just imagine you're a bunch of cells and you're hit with this incredible physiological stressor you've never seen before. You've got tens of thousands of genes. What do you do? How do you know which genes to turn on and off? You don't have time to try combinations. You don't have time for an exhaustive search. You don't have time for hill climbing. You don't have time to try random things because you'll probably kill the cell long before you solve the problem. And yet you were able to navigate from where you are to where you need to be to escape this physiological stressor. And so what I think evolution has done is pivoted some of the same tricks from very simple systems that only solve metabolic problems, eventually to physiological, and then to transcriptional problems. And when multicellularity comes on the scene, large-scale anatomical problems. And so it's never a question of, is something physics and chemistry or is it cognitive? The question is, what kind of cognition and how much?
Whoa. So that means there's cognition that goes all the way down in nature, man. If that's correct. You know what I mean? And
To each
that's the
and
thing.
every single cell, right?
Mm-hmm. Is just as simple as it can be. It figures out problems in order to get where its goals are. So it has goals. My question
Hmm.
is, where do these goals and direction come from? Where are they
Which would
getting
make it
this
conscious,
intelligence?
right?
Right. It's got to be because it's got to be aware of where it is in time and space, and it's got to be aware of its external environment. So you have to have awareness. That's that's at least consciousness at its bare minimal definition, right?
Right, right,
So
exactly. And you know,
that's crazy,
a lot
man.
of people said that before there was ever such a thing as science. And I wonder why. Because he
Yes.
did say something about if you were to be able to sense your own, what he said,
Blood chemistry.
blood chemistry.
Mm,
Well, I believe there's something to it. And I believe that highly tuned in and intuitive people can, at the very least, you know, kind of know what's going on with their own biology without going to a doctor. I mean, even the most average person can sense when something's wrong. But just imagine if we were to naturally develop these, uh, I guess, abilities that we have naturally.
mm-hmm.
Like, man, there wouldn't be any need for technology, in my
There
opinion.
you.
We are,
That's what I'm
we
getting
are
to.
the technology. We are the
We
technology.
are the technology. We are the best technology. Like all we can do is mimic. When we do this artificial stuff, all we're trying to do is copy what nature's already doing anyways.
Right.
So I
We're
don't
just creating
understand.
a false image, and that's what the religious people preach, but I don't think they really understand what they're saying, you know.
Right. Hold on,
Because
let's
a
see
lot
what.
of that has just been, wrapped up in dogma and transmuted into something else.
Yeah, but also because they just don't have the comprehension. They take ancient Kemetic stuff and think they know what the hell it means. And I'm like, no, that's not what it means.
Yeah, there's so
They
much
think it's
ancient wisdom, like especially, in certain cultures where they actually focus so much into stuff like consciousness and stuff like that. They have thousands of years of study, research, into this, and we just ignore it because we think,
yeah.
they were just savages. What
The
do they know?
Council
We
of
need to come
Niacin
in
just
and
said we need to
mm,
gatekeep this information and we gonna fucking put this shit out here how we think this is. We need to intervene. They always think they gotta intervene and take over.
mm-hmm.
Like, leave natural nature, just leave it alone. You don't need to intervene. That gets on my nerves. Let me stop.
Yeah, because and when you study nature, what you can do, what you can do if you
It's
want
like
to,
the
if
po always up your
yeah,
ass.
always in your ass about, and a lot of this stuff is sort of reactionary, like a lot of, because think about it, we've like we were just saying, cultures have been talking about this stuff for thousands and thousands of years, but now here in the West, we're just now rediscovering with our tools and ways that we can use a microscope to look down and see this stuff in action. And we're like, hey, look what we've discovered.
It's
You
like
know, it's
it's like it's like science is catching up with mysticism.
yes, yeah, that's beautiful though, because I kind of like that because, I guess there was a reason humanity had to kind of like reset itself because of all the things we went through with people abusing religion. Because, like, people abuse religions and they burn women at the stake for being witches, and they did a lot of fucked up shit, and took over cultures and
Book burning,
harmed
Yeah.
burning
people
of
and
libraries.
yeah, burnt
Well, I think
killing
at the end of the
scientists.
day, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to avoiding accountability. People just don't want to do the work. These elitists want to shield themselves from karma, the natural
Mm-hmm.
process of evolution, because they say, why should I have to suffer? I can
Mm-hmm.
let everybody else suffer while I hide away in a bubble. Why should I have to go through illness? Why should I? They don't want to experience those things. And unfortunately, you know, while the rest evolve, they don't. And so now they're like, what the fuck are we going to do now? Because they pretty much make themselves weaker and weaker and weaker. And so
Oh
now you got
yeah.
to use mental tactics and brainwash people, anything to try to control their mind, control language, so you can control people's mental process, all that kind of stuff. It's all about control, and it's done to escape accountability, self
Oh, of course.
accountability.
Yes, and that sort of falls in line. Unfortunately, at least it sounds very suspiciously similar to the new progressive movements that we see going on in the
Yeah, the
world, where
radicals and shit.
yeah, the radicals that want to like just I mean, there's even meetings people have once a year. These elitists get together and talk about how they want to lower the population of the world in order to make it more comfortable for those who's left here, because it's all the
Yeah.
other people that are making it hard on the rest of us, right?
Haha,
And
you
it's
said hard on.
yeah, hard on. Yeah,
Damn, Scott.
they have a hard on for us.
No, they have a hard on for death and destruction.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they think they can save themselves. That's why. That's why they have their
Hmm.
little bunkers and think they
Yep.
can terraform Mars. They think they're gonna be good. They think they're gonna be good.
Hmm.
They just go watch everybody
No,
else explode and
no,
die.
Yeah, because they've got it right. They're so smart.
no.
They're elite. They're the best, the
Yep,
superior ones, and they've
yep.
proven it because they're born rich. I mean, you know, who can beat being born rich? You can't accomplish that. Like, it's such an accomplishment. But we have this video that you sent me the other day. This Greg Braden, and
Yeah,
he
I love that
actually
guy.
talks about, yeah, man, he's talking about the rise of transhumanism. Do we have wisdom to not forget what
And
makes
might
us
I
human?
note, he actually is a scientist, I believe.
Yes, he is. He's a scientist, absolutely. So we'll start kind of going through it. Maybe we can do some reactions on the video, and it really falls in line with everything we've been speaking about so far. So let's take a listen. Let me just back this up to the
Get
beginning of that part
that
here.
mouth off of my sword.
And with this transhuman movement and the exponential rise of various technologies from food engineering to CRISPR technology, gene editing, AI, there's both incredible promise that these technologies brings in solving a lot of issues that is incredible. And yet at the same time, you spoke to the part as we continue to merge technology, in our human biology, there's aspects of ourselves that we start to lose access to, that start to atrophy within ourselves.
Sure.
And so I'd love for you to set the stage too, of, because not everybody realizes where we're currently at in terms of this,
Yeah.
and the dangers and the promise, because there's both. I mean, just this past month, we saw the first Neuralink patient successfully be able to control computer mouse with his brain, and, you know, is a quadriplegic, and there's incredible things for that as well.
You know, this is part of a very old conversation. Some of our listeners may be familiar with my work. So I'm not. I'm a scientist. I'm a degreed earth scientist, my first degree, and I worked in the corporations as a problem solver from 1979 until the early 1990s. And so I had and I say this because I had the opportunity to work alongside brilliant scientists. I mean, physicists, mathematicians, engineers, just amazing, amazing people, and see amazing technology. And that'll be important in our conversation here in just a moment. But there was a part of this conversation that would typically happen around the coffee machine and the drinking fountain and in the break room, where the scientists and the engineers would get together. And the conversation would typically go like this. There was one group that would always say, because we can do these things, because we've had the insight to develop these extraordinary technologies, that gives us the right to use them. That gives us the right to implement them. If we were never meant to implement them, we never would have figured it out. And during the Cold War years, when this was around weapons technology, this is a very important conversation. There's another school of thought, another group of scientists say, oh, hold on, not so fast. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because we can do these things, maybe we ought to reel it in a little bit and think about the moral implications.
So what do you think about that? Because a lot of people make this naturalistic argument. They'll say, well, you're saying that, Sophia, that we're all nature, we're all part of nature, we're not outside of nature, but we are nature. But then as natural beings, we start doing these things. Isn't that just an expression of nature itself?
Well, I would say no, because let's just say we could clearly see the order of nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sets forth how we must live, right?
Right.
And you say, well, no, I don't think nature is correct. I think that this matrix that I want to create with my own set of rules works better, and that would become artificial intelligence. But you're still deriving a lot of it from nature, but you're just putting your own spin on it,
Mm-hmm.
So
it's kind of like the naturalistic fallacy, like kind of thinking, well, we have the ability to jump out of windows doesn't necessarily mean we should, right?
exactly, that's a stupid argument. Like,
right.
That
I have the ability to kill somebody. That doesn't mean I should.
That reminds
Right.
me of like a DC Comics. They have superheroes such as like Superman and like Dr. Manhattan. In this fictional universe or multiverse, whatever they're trying to go that direction. These are like some of the most powerful beings in their respective universes that can do, to a large degree, like whatever they want, surpass all kinds of human limitations. They might be effectively impervious, effectively immortal, or whatever. But in order to keep these stories interesting, they still have like a kind of like a human psychology and perspective, at least to some degree, and they still have dilemmas, and the dilemma is oftentimes with these extraordinary individuals, not can I do this, because clearly they can. It's should I?
Exactly. And can I add something to that
Go ahead.
as a good example? let's take this mRNA, DNA, mRNA messenger DNA or whatever it's called, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically nanotechnology, right? And you can program it to tell your body something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Sounds good because you can tell your body not to be sick and then your body does a turnaround. Cool, awesome. But who programs this stuff? What if that can be hacked by some evil hacker and he says, tell this body to die from a heart attack? Well, then that can be used like a kill switch, like a cattle prod.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, do you want to take that risk? Really?
Oh,
Do you
it's kind of
trust?
mm-mm.
Do you trust the experts so much that you think they're going to do the right thing? Because let's examine human nature throughout history.
And right by whom? Right for whom?
Yeah.
Right.
So like, it comes with a lot of, it just goes back to that. Like, just because we can doesn't mean we should. There's a
Yeah.
lot of shit that you got to consider first.
It's kind of like Neuralink. Like me and my brother, when Neuralink, the idea first came out, like what, 10, 15 years ago, and Elon Musk was floating the idea, and me and my brother were like, man, we'll sign up for that. We'll be the first one to sign up for that. But then as we started really thinking about it and kind of learning things, and we're like, I don't know if that'd be a really good idea, because suppose the government or some authority wants to hack into your brain and screw you, fry your
Yeah, because
brain, or I don't
because
know.
think about it. You ridicule people, right, who do mind expanders such as LSD, who swear up and down, hey, I've had telepathic experiences when I did LSD. I was able to communicate with other people without opening my mouth. But you get ridiculed for that, and people will say, oh, you're just hallucinating, right? But yet these
Mm-hmm.
people want to use their technology to create the very thing that people say they have experienced naturally, you know, to
Right.
be able to control um, some object with your mind, and it's okay if it's coming from the scientists. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about people who are trying to gatekeep, you know,
Mm-hmm.
certain things that we could actually achieve naturally? Or are they even coming up with anything new?
No,
Or do
that's
they
that
want or
that's
do
the
they
whole
want to just
point.
do it? Or do they want to just do it in such a way where they're in full control of it? That's the question.
That's the whole thing, because I was talking about this with my friend Tony the other day. Like, the whole idea about the Neuralink thing. The appealing thing was, like, me and my brother used to sit around and talk. Man, imagine if we could upload our thoughts to the computer, and we had Neuralink to kind of use. That would be the machine we would use, that little chip, to actually connect to the internet, and then we could transfer our experience of, let's say, DMT on the net. So someone else with Neuralink could plug in and download that information into their brain, and then they would have the same experience. Well, not really, because again, I don't think you can really upload experience itself. All you're really doing is uploading your memory of it. And so it's not going to be the same. It's like our
Mhm.
brain is a chemical, electrochemical thing. And even if you could send out the signals that would trigger your own, hormones and cells to actually generate that experience for you, that it would be
It'd be
your
different.
yeah, it would be your experience, not the guy who sent it. It would be your own, because it was still triggering your own natural, cells and everything in your brain, neurons or whatever. And so you might as well just do DMT yourself. Like, you don't need,
Yeah, that would be
it's
a
like
more
you might as well just
cost-effective
get DMT,
and
and
cheap
it's the
way of
same
doing it.
thing.
I heard you say not natural in like
Well,
a
I'm
mocking
talking
way.
about LSD because that is a synthetic chemical. However,
Hmm.
there is a related
Okay,
chemical
well
called
let me
LSA, which
say this
is
then.
naturally
There
occurring.
are people who can naturally reach those states of consciousness. So let's scratch the DMT, let's scratch the
Hmm.
psilocybin, whatever. Let's talk about mystics, monks, whatever, um, who people who swear that they can reach those type of states of consciousness.
Achieving
Right.
altered states of consciousness without the use of mind-altering substances, at least externally.
Yeah, so those people exist too, and they're mocked. Nobody believes that shit, you know. But then Elon Musk jumps around saying he's the guru of all science.
I'm gonna put a microchip
and
in your
because
brain.
he's
Hooray!
such a genius, we're just gonna, you know, he's only taking a concept that already exists naturally. Was my point.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, let's keep on with the video. I have so many things I could say on that too, but let me not distract us. Hold on just a second.
Or what it means to our values in society. That conversation has never been resolved. It's an ongoing conversation right now. So it's like the gas and the brakes. On the one hand, we are going full bore, exploring the deepest mysteries of the universe and of life itself. And now we have the ability, as some people say, to hack the physics of the universe and to hack the biology of human life or all life. And once you do that, the proverbial genie is out of the bottle. You're never going to go back. Once you develop it, you're never going to undevelop it. Probably not going to set it on a shelf somewhere. You're going to use it and implement it some way. So the other piece of this is what I saw very quickly is technology isn't good or bad or right or wrong. It's the thinking that underlies the society when the technology is being developed. During World War II and the Cold War years, we poured tremendous amounts of energy and human power, human intellect, and money and technology into pushing the boundaries of what we know. And we discovered beautiful things like how to split the atom. Unfortunately, it was within the context of wartime that application was used for a weapon, when we all know there's so many beautiful things that can come from that. And the same is happening with transhumanism. There are places, and you just mentioned one. Elon Musk has a company called Neuralink, and it's actually been around for a while. And they are the first to develop the computer chip. It's not actually in the brain. It's interesting. It sits in a space above the brain and below the bone. And there's a little space in there. And there are 128 microfibers that go down into the neocortex. And they pick up information. There's sensors. Pick up information from the neurons, bring it back to the chip, and the chip then processes it and sends it through essentially a Bluetooth type technology to the computer with no wires. That can be a beautiful thing for servicemen and women who have lost arms and legs and in the battlefields halfway around the world, Afghanistan, Iraq, to give a man or woman the ability to hold their babies in their arms once again with their prosthetics, or to brush their own teeth or comb their own hair or feed themselves. But what a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's one of the good things that can come from all of this. There are now proposals on the table, governmental agencies proposing by the year 2030 that all newborns be implanted with a computer chip in the brain.
What?
They say to give them the edge in business and in technology, and to be able to compete successfully in life. And when I say this to a live audience, I mean, I can see people's eyes. They say, not my babies. We don't want this. So there's a part of us. This is the generation, Andre. It's not going to drag on forever. We're at this pivotal point where the technology is at this stage where we are now making a decision. And I'm fascinated by this because it's never happened before. We now have the ability to make decisions that will not change so much the world around us, but the world within us forever in ways that can never.
Shalom, friends.
Wow.
We are here at the
That's crazy. Let me mute this and get this through. But yeah, what do you think, man? That's pretty scary stuff, man. To think that,
Yeah, and it's like he said, we're at that juncture right now.
yep.
What an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, we
I
about to see some weird shit.
and see, this is the thing. I was back when we were talking about the Neuralink, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of my friends didn't think that was possible. Like they were like, that'll never happen. That's just that's just a lot of science fiction and man thinking he can do anything. But voila, here we are. So that's kind of like scary and kind of like shows you just how powerful we are as beings, that we can do this kind of stuff where we can actually manipulate our outer and internal reality. Scary.
Well, the thing about science fiction is that science fiction is inspired by science fact
Yep.
and, hypotheses that scientific minds have come up with. And then, these hypotheses are tested. If it's confirmed at least once in a thought experiment, then that hypothesis is upgraded to a theory. And then we continue to run that theory through a battery of tests to see if it holds true or if it needs to be augmented or discarded and start from scratch with a new hypothesis.
Hmm.
But in a lot of instances, science fiction is an art form that predicts the future progression of science and engineering.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Absolutely, man.
and there have been numerous shows from we touched on Star Trek to certain animes like Ghost in the Shell, where they have all of these characters that could be it's just a mixed bag of a society where there's characters that are just pure humans living alongside characters that have some kind of like prosthetics to characters that have more like augmentations. They're not just humans with prosthetics. It comes to a point where they're actually cyborgs with augmented senses and capabilities to machines that do not take a human form, but are programmed with an artificial intelligence, and they have their own agency to androids that are in a humanoid form and may be uploaded with a person, what is considered a person's consciousness, like we discussed previously, the
Hmm.
memories and the objectives of a human that perhaps once was.
Right. Right. Because and a lot of that is like a survival mechanism. Like if you think about like how AI is really, um, getting smarter and smarter every 6 months. Like where AI is today is actually farther along than was predicted last year. And so, a lot of people are thinking, especially researchers and people like that, are thinking, and even those who, like Kurzweil, the guy that's the head of the transhumanist movement, is like, well, if we're going to survive, we're going to have to become AI because we're creating an AI that's going to be smarter than us, better than us, in everything. So if we want to survive, we're going to have to become them. Otherwise, we're just going to get destroyed by them. But this kind of is a wrong conceptualization, in my opinion. Like, really, again, what does it mean to be a you, a self, anyways? Like, so what they're saying is we're already doing it. When you use a smartphone, you're already becoming a cyborg because you're extending your knowledge and your mind through this machine. The same thing with prosthetics. When you put, all it is a matter of degree. You know, When you get
Mm-hmm.
old, you're going to need a new heart, you're going to need a new lung, you're going to need new legs, you're going to need new every. So what's the difference? You're already, the only thing that's really maintaining is your brain, but even your brain is going to die too. So we can go in with nanotechnology and Neuralink implants, and we can keep your brain going to where now you've just essentially become the computer anyways. So just as a matter of survival, it's inevitable. That's their argument. But my whole thing is like, well, at that
It's
point,
still a choice.
yeah, it's still a choice, and it's just an interesting argument they put forward. But there's so many other arguments
Well, in
against
a
it.
way, it's true because I mean,
Hmm.
just look at how people depend on technology. Without the internet, you can't even get a job anymore because you have to fill out things online. You know,
Hmm.
you can't even get your damn license renewed in person anymore, or whatever. Like, it's just so many things that you can't do without technology. And I actually saw this weird freaking movie, and I don't know the name of it. It was some kind of independent little film, but the gist of the movie was people became uh, addicts. They were vaccine dependent, and had to go back for more, and they started becoming all deformed and shit, and we're just like
Mm.
Christ.
overdoing it, and it was like they were turning themselves into like these, I don't know, messed up ass weird species or something. And that's just the thing. Where does this stuff end? How
Hmm.
far is this shit gonna really go? Can you even still do things without technology? Can you go outside still and take a deep breath and say, "Oh my God, it's nice out here"? Or can you still sit on the beach and say, "Oh wow, I love this sunset"? Can you still even do things like that?
Right. Right.
Most people
Right.
depriving themselves of good oxygen because they don't even go outside anymore. It's like cool to be antisocial. Mental illness is celebrated, and that's the downside of it. Mental illness has skyrocketed. People ain't having the bodily movement anymore that they need.
Or the
All that stuff
the
contributes.
stimulation
All that stuff contributes to
engagement.
bad health, overall bad health, mental and physically. So yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, they're telling you to your face, we're destroying you. So you have no other choice but to become AI. You're not even
Yeah.
going to be able to live without it. But it's being artificially orchestrated. That's my problem with it.
Yeah, and then it just blurs the line. Like, at what point are we really talking about preserving the self? Because there's just this video.
Sound to me more
Um,
like you're destroying the self.
you
Like,
really are, because there's this channel called Pursuit of Wonder, and he talks about this, and he usually talks about it by telling little stories. He creates these little mini stories, and
mhm.
he sends the message through the story. He doesn't really tell you, but he just creates a storyline, and you will follow the story, and it leaves you with the message that he's trying to convey. And one of the stories that he was presenting was like, in the year 2050 or something like that, this guy invents like this technology where you can become a transhuman, post-human person. So you sign a contract, and you say, look, if you sign this contract, you're agreeing that we're going to replace your body with this machine, to be a better person so that you live longer. So he signs everybody signs up for it, and they
Hmm.
do that, and everything's fine. But then they have a way where, well, now you can get rid of all those traumatic memories that you had and replace them with better memories. So then you replace them, you sign the contract, and you do this all the way up the line throughout over the centuries, to where essentially you're not even you anymore. You don't even know who it was that signed that contract to begin with.
That's
Like,
ridiculous.
and then the people are like, how do we know I signed the contract? Who was this how do I know y'all aren't just fooling me? And they're like, no, you signed it like 200 years ago. Like, but I don't know who that person is. I have no memory of that person. I have nothing in common with that person. It's like, after a while, you've lost yourself. And it sort of
Yep.
ends right there, right? And so I guess the message is, what are you really preserving, really? You
That's
know?
what I want to know. What are we
Mhm.
preserving? Demons?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
like,
were y'all trying to channel some demons up in this bitch? Now let me
yeah,
stop.
like, what the hell are we really trying to preserve? Because
Were we
at
bringing
that
an
point,
alien race onto the planet through us or something? Like,
right, right,
let me know what's really going on, man.
There
yeah,
there are some kind of art forms from like films to music videos that explore some of these concepts. Of course, like one that was popular, like you know, in the early 2000s was the Matrix,
mm-hmm,
and
yep,
they really kind of fleshed out a lot of possibilities of what a future could look like, um, with the development of uh, you know um, machine technology and AI, uh, uh, just taken to the extreme, like as basically as far as we can take it, of completely automating society and making it to where essentially there's very little work required for most humans to do at all. This society can be hypothetically, theoretically sustained and maintained uh, by automatons. And not just the Matrix, but iRobot. They show how you know there can still arise a a kind of a tipping point, where basically we as humans are no longer in control of the how history will unfold. We develop this independent a technological entity that gains agency, is able to surpass us in ability to innovate and create, and then at that point we are just completely outmatched. And then how do we survive in that world? Well,
see, right,
in the Matrix, they basically have to go into hiding and
mm-hmm.
just kind of like pick their battles, save who can be saved, and not try to like stir the hornet's nest or poke the bear, basically.
See, from my perspective, and I'll show you why I believe this way, because I used to be a really strong Christian many, many, many years ago. And the thing is that I find, from my perspective, because of my background, I see such a parallel between this whole transhumanist movement and religion, like in Christian religion in particular, which a lot of people would be like, "How so? That doesn't make sense. We're against that." Christians will usually say that, but actually, they both, and this is why I lean mainly towards the more naturalistic sort of spiritual philosophies and wisdom teachings, right? Like with the American Indians and the Hawaiians and the Buddhists and the Far Eastern sort of wisdom traditions. I think they had it more right than the European church did. And I'll tell you, I'll give you this verse and tell me if this doesn't sound like transhumanism. I'm going to replace the word God with technology. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to read Revelation verses 1 through 4. It's Revelation 21, verse 1 through 4. Technology dwelt with them, and they shall be with its people. And technology himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away.
Wow.
Now, the original, of course, says God. But if we replace the word God with technology, we're talking about transhumanism.
Hell yeah. And I've always said this, man. That Yahweh guy, I don't know who that nigga is.
He's
Oh
evil,
shit.
man.
I can't
Tell me
say
that
that
shit
word.
is evil. That is
Yes.
evil. And see, the thing is that that's why I mainly lean towards the more earth people sort of traditions where they are against that whole thing. Like they embrace life and the cycle of life and death, and they
Right.
understand things,
They see
like
it as a
there's
part of the whole because it is.
right, it is.
And then
And
and
there
now
is
that
no
this
you that it expands on forever and ever. The you is just a concept.
right,
Even the Bible says,
there's only experience. So this whole God is trying to hold on to the individual experience, the ego.
mm-hmm,
And that's an ego God. That's why he's such an egomaniac.
right. And that's why the people, the followers, the people, the church, they're egomaniacs too. And that's why
Yep.
they think their egos are so much more important than the cell other people that come from other traditions and things like that. It's very, very slippery slope evil, man,
Yeah.
because
And hence the belief in the concept of being a chosen people.
yeah, and
Yeah, they
plus
chose themselves though.
plus it's sort of self-contradictory because the God here is saying, look, I'm going to wipe out every tear from your eyes. It's going to be no more. You have no more challenges in life to worry about. There's going to be no more
No more
crying,
pain.
no more tears, no more pain. You're not even going to remember anything else that happened in your life. Then who are you then? You're a different person at that point.
You're
Like what's
nothing at
really
that point.
what's really being saved at that point? Like there's nothing really being preserved. And it's the same question I have for the transhumanists. Like what are we really trying to preserve here? Because you're talking about this fictional ego thing that I don't believe in. And I don't even see the ego as necessarily all that fucking great anyways. What's so fucking great about your ego self?
What they're
Like,
trying to preserve is this matrix in the way that they constructed it. And then everyone else is going to go along like a fucking automaton without even questioning it because
yep.
people ain't even going to feel shit anymore. They're not going to know shit anymore. They're just going to be robots. They're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
human. And there's only
Yep.
going to be a few people who will keep reincarnating into the same bloodline and use this place as a fucking playground and do what they want when they want to do it, however they want to do it, without accountability. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. That's what they think. But they forget that number one, it's probably not even possible. But number two, even if it was possible, it wouldn't be you doing it. It would just be some other being, like you said, an alien or a demon or something.
Right,
It would be some empty shit.
but that would be in their best interest because you won't be complaining about shit. Your feelings and emotions is what makes you too difficult.
In other
I mean, that's
words,
the
you're
problem.
dead.
That's the problem in relationships. You know, if you're too outspoken or if you have emotions or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, it's too tough. You know, I can't deal with this. I like you better if you was just a fucking blow up doll, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, man.
that's why I'm like, this is where we're at. People don't want you to disagree. People don't want you to have your own viewpoint anymore. People just want shit to be easy.
Yes.
That's peace for people. I want it to be
Right.
easy. I want you to be quiet. I want you to do what I said. I want you to do as you're told. I want you to obey. Just shut up. Just don't say shit. Just make it easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the whole world right now. Like it's even on the job. Like, you see that on my job and stuff like that. People don't want you to have a voice or actually have
No,
a concern. It's like, look, I'm a particular being and I have a certain things that I like and don't like. And you do too. So we should compromise and work with each other and build a relationship, build it up and go through our
no, that's too
problems.
hard.
That's
Because
too hard though.
why should
Yeah,
you have to work for anything? You're entitled to have what you want when you want it. When you
right.
snap your fingers.
freaking
Exactly.
airline corporations not even wanting staff to bring up legitimate concerns
Mm-hmm.
because the people at the top, they don't want to actually spend the money to make their their planes like correct and safe, just so that the shareholders can
Yeah.
get their dividends.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous throughout society, man, and that's the whole thing, So, um, but let's go in. There's another part here about the potential in human biology, which kind of goes back to the Michael Levin thing I was mentioning. But let's see what his take on that is. Really interesting
Hey,
here.
to a young
All right.
person, and I have a really very honest conversation. Computer chips are fast. Absolutely, they're fast, efficient, totally. I mean, I'm with you on that. I was a senior computer systems designer for a company called Martin Marietta Defense Systems, and I was with the computers day and night, and they are impressive machines. So I'm not denigrating that in any way. But here's the thing: a computer chip will always be limited in its function by the physics of the stuff it's made of. So the atoms of silicon, for example, the space between those atoms only allows information to travel so fast between that space. And once that limit is reached, it can't be scaled. So that is the upper limit. They've reached the capacity for that computer chip. Now you look at a human neuron and you say, well, what is the upper limit on the human neuron? And the answer is we don't know. And here's the reason. This is so beautiful. Because every time we think we reach the capacity of a neuron to hold or transmit information, what happens is that neuron adapts and it morphs, it shifts, it changes to accommodate the greater capacity that we're asking it to do. We don't know what the top end is because every time we reach it, we exceed it. That's part of our humanness. And when young people begin to understand them, we don't have any chips that can do anything to that degree. And that's just one example. I mean, the immune system is another example. We'll probably have a whole conversation on the immune system and what that means. So the human body, the average human body has about 50 trillion cells in the body, give or take, whatever average is. Every one of those cells has an electrical potential. It's about 0.07 volts per cell. And you say, well, that's, it's a pretty small potential. And I agree, but you do the math, 50 trillion times 0.07 volts of electrical potential. Now you're talking about over 3 billion volts of electrical potential.
Mm.
What would it mean if we could harness that and then apply that to our healing or to our intuition or to the regeneration of the cells in our bodies? But it doesn't stop there, because every cell in our body, it functions as a transistor, it functions as a resistor, it functions as a capacitor, it stores and releases information. It is a photon generator. We're sending light, and light is information. So we're sending light into the field around us, and we're receiving light from the sun and from other individuals. We are photon receivers. Every cell stores information and retrieves it just like we do on a chip. And here, the young people love this. There's a technology out there called blockchain technology that is the foundation for Bitcoin and digital finance. Where did the idea for blockchain come from? Blockchain technology in computers actually mimics the way that DNA stores information in the cells. The information of the blockchain is immutable. Once it's there forever. It's transparent. If you know how to read it, anybody can read it. It can't be hacked. It is secure. And that's exactly why blockchain is so powerful with digital currencies. That's the way we store information in the human body. And I could go on. The point is, all the technology in the world around us, to some degree, it's mimicking what we already do within our bodies, except we do it better. Can I just share a short story
Absolutely.
about this? 1990, I was hiking through a remote area in northwestern New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, in preparation to lead a group. I was doing a reconnaissance trip. And I was hiking on a remote trail, and there was a native man by himself who was hiking in the opposite direction. And he stopped, and we talked for a few moments. And he began to tell me a story. And the story is pertinent to this conversation. He said, a long time ago, the people of the earth remembered who they were, and they lived much closer to the earth. And they were much happier, of course. And he says, something happened, and even the elders don't know what it was, but the people of the earth began to forget who they are. But they so long for the deep connection that they had between themselves and the forces of nature and the cosmos and the earth under their feet. They so long for that connection that they began to build in the world outside of them reminders of what that connection meant in the world inside of them. And he said, we live in that world today. We long for that connection. We miss ourselves, our true potential. And he said, we'll keep building stuff. We'll clutter our world with gadgets and machines and devices that continue to mimic and reflect back to us who we are, until one day we wake up and we say, oh my God, that's us. And then we will let the external technology go, because we will have remembered to awaken our inner technology. The world becomes more sophisticated because we've awakened, yet it looks simpler because the external clutter goes away. And
Wow.
that man remains a friend today in one of the pueblos in northern New Mexico.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like the more the kind of spiritual traditions that really resonate with me are those sort of things. They don't look for the external validation. It's more about your internal growth and evolution that's really giving you meaning and purpose and happiness and peace. And that's what I find works for me. All this other stuff, Yahweh's gonna kill your ego, your enemies, and prop your ego up forever and ever and ever, so you can worship his ego, and your enemies can go away. And you
Which
know,
is really worshiping your own ego, and anything that doesn't exalt your ego is an enemy.
yes,
And what at the end of the day, you're going to be left empty, because what you're going to do when you run out of people to worship your ego?
mm-mm,
What you going to do then? That's like
right,
running out of shit that you can collect, and you think the material stuff that you hoard is going to make you happy. But then
mm-hmm,
when you're on your deathbed, you can't take none of that shit with you, and you realize how empty you really are inside. Like, come on.
right. And I mean, that's what awareness is. There has to be an interaction. Like, for consciousness to be a thing, you have to be conscious of something. you know, like we
Yeah,
have this interaction with nature, and that's really that symbiotic relationship, that challenge, that growth period, that whole space is what's giving our life meaning and everything. And when we take that away on purpose, I'm not really sure what we're trying to do at that point. It's
because
just
it's all about the false image, which is the definition of narcissism. A narcissist doesn't think he has anything without the false image of himself.
mm-hmm. Right, right. But here's another part that was really interesting too, where he's talking about how technology actually atrophies our brain and our biology.
Need our biology to connect to the information in the field. Divinity is part of that information. Our intuition, our creativity, what some people call your higher self, when you're praying or when you're
Mm-hmm.
meditating. What you're actually doing is your physiology, what our ancestors called the temple. This is the temple, the vessel that holds the antenna. We are communicating with that part, that place in the field where many people have come before us and are also communicating with that place in the field. This is why when you begin to replace the natural biology with synthetics, there are no longer neurons. There's no longer DNA. And what that means is there's no longer antenna. So we still may function in this physical world. We have now been veiled. I don't want to say it's completely lost, but the access is veiled, more difficult to get to for our intuition, our conscience that knows what's right and wrong and good and bad, and the ability to communicate with other forms of life on subtle levels. Other
I'm gonna feed these cats really quick. I'm gonna let this video roll. Hold on just a
Is
second.
he?
dimension.
That sounds. That's not that. What's crazy is that sounds exactly like what happens to people who do methamphetamines.
Yes, absolutely. Hold on just a second. I'm gonna let this video roll. I'll be right back.
On subtle levels, the ability to meditate and elevate ourselves in those levels, all of that innovation, creativity, imagination, all of that begins to atrophy. If we don't use, and this is the danger, and the science is showing us, if we don't use those parts of ourselves now, so for example, computer chips are put into the brain, into the neocortex, and they begin to replace mirror neurons. And we'll talk about mirror neurons a little bit. It's a class of neuron. What the studies show really clearly is the new discoveries is that the human brain continues to produce neurons until the last breath we take on this planet. We used to be told, when I was in college, I was told, you've got X number of neurons, and every time you drink a beer, you're going to lose a bunch. So that was the leverage, not to have a beer or whatever it was you were doing. Now we know it's not true. That we continue to produce them until the last breath of life. However, and this is the caveat, if a new neuron is produced and it is not engaged in a meaningful way, within about 14 days, it will atrophy and die because it feels like it's not needed. If we have AI virtual visors in our children that are entertaining them, everything is being done for them. So you got a 3-year-old sitting on the floor in the living room after breakfast with a visor for hours, watching extraordinary scenes and vivid colors and sounds they would never see in the natural world. But here's the thing, it's all being done for them. They're not engaging their imagination. They're not engaging their creativity. They're not engaging their problem-solving skills. All they're doing is being entertained. And what happens is the brain cells that are not engaged begin to atrophy. So now psychologists are publishing papers of young kids that are doing just this, and they have cognitive impairment because everything from motor skills to language to socialization, the visual cortex is thickening because that is the part of their brain that's being used. When we fail to engage our divinity in a meaningful way, those parts of us begin to atrophy in one generation. Next generation, your body says, we didn't use these much. Maybe we don't need this anymore. And it becomes an appendage of a skill that we used to have. This is how you lose a species. It's exactly how you lose a species because it's happening on the genetic level as well, with reproduction, with immune response, all of these kinds of things. So the point is that it's through our natural biology that we have access to our divinity or to our ability to transcend our perceived limitations. When our natural biology is replaced, then those skills either begin to atrophy or we lose access altogether to that field. We're still alive. We may no longer be human if we define human through DNA and as Homo sapiens. We may become something very different. One of the directors of research at Google Technology, Ray Kurzweil is his name. He's a futurist. He's a visionary. He's been around for a very long time. And I'm just going to share his perspective, and it's not out of disrespect for Ray Kurzweil because he's a technologist. So he's just looking at the technology and what's possible. And what he says is by the year 2030, 2035, we will no longer be pure human. He said, when you talk to another human, we'll be talking and we will become some degree of hybrid between external technology, artificial technology, and natural biology. And he believes this is moving toward what he calls the singularity. The singularity is where we become, the technology that we have embraced within our bodies becomes so dominant that we now are part of the internet of all things.
Yes, so that's kind of like replacing ourselves with technology. It's post-human, like
Yeah,
what
it's
Alex was
it's
referring.
cancel culture.
Yeah, literally.
Well, I mean that's kind of the along the lines of
God
the
damn.
process that I had to go through to
Yeah.
determine that I wasn't really down with the transhumanism agenda, at least not to the ends that a lot of these people want to take it, and definitely I don't agree with a lot of the methodologies that a lot of these people want to use.
Mm.
Um, and so my own philosophy has evolved to a point where I'm more I, I'm influenced by transhumanism, but I'm not fully on board with that. But I'm also uh, influenced by um, kind of like philosophical, political um, schools of thought, like anarcho-primitivism. And
Mm-hmm.
um, if you don't mind, I would like to play this short.
What is anarcho primitivism?
Oh,
Oh yeah, I
that's
pulled
like a
that
whole
video
other
up.
topic. I don't believe that we've got time to really just go into it
There's no
in
short
depth
version of what that is.
in this episode, but like the long and short of it is, it's a similar premise to what transhumanism uh, kind of says. It's like, there's problems with the human condition, with the way that civilization is, but instead of taking the approach of pushing technology um, to its maximum limit and then beyond, it's saying, no, we need to go back to the drawing board, go back
Mm-hmm.
to a more primitive way of being and living and interacting with the world. And so I thought that this would be a nice, humorous video to watch, because it's in the form of a rap battle.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. And I was just gonna say that the other thing I wanted to add from my perspective is like, for me, like if people want to commit suicide, they can go right
Mhm.
ahead. I can't stop them. Like we couldn't stop a lot of things, people from doing a lot of things in history. So they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and people can choose to do that. But I'm not going to be one of them. Like I don't see the value in it, and I think that at least right now, unless somebody can really come up with some defeaters for that, but for all the reasons that we've been talking about, it just seems like we have everything we need right here in us. In fact, we are all we need. You know what I'm saying? Like we are the
Mhm.
I believe
technology.
that too.
Yeah, we are the technology,
Yes.
and the dying ego is not the worst thing. We know that. We've taken DMT so many times throughout our lives. We understand that death isn't that bad. And I just don't feel like
And
the
I wanna
ego
I
is
wanna
that important. Go
I
ahead.
wanna say one more thing to that too. Like, we all want good things. And I heard a friend of mine say that last night. We all want good things, but just because something's good doesn't mean it's gonna feel very good. just because something's good doesn't mean it's going to taste very good. You know what I'm saying? It's all about discipline and training the mind in the way it should go. So you can say, oh, I want to feel good, but you're doing that shit that's actually harmful to yourself
or harmful to others.
or harmful to others. So what's good? You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to make you feel good. And I think transhumanism is a lot about just feeling good, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think people should be at least educated on all the views about this topic and about philosophy and everything we've been talking about. I think people should really examine stuff like that before they decide to do anything. It's just like, anything else. If you want to, you know, change your gender, let's say you're an adult and you want to become a woman or a man or whatever, you should really count the cost on that. That's why I'm kind of against it when it comes to children under 18. I'm not really sure that makes any sense to me. It's like you've got your whole life ahead of you. Why do you want to use hormone blockers and stuff like that that can take away so much of what makes life? But if you're an adult, you can
And
decide to do
in
whatever you
addition,
want.
yeah. But in addition to that, the way I see it like the whole transgender ideology is you know trying to fix a problem that is in the mind by augmenting the body. And this whole process of transitioning, it's only like in imitation. And yeah, you could take the
Yeah,
hormones and stuff, but never it's never going to be the real thing. And yeah, like you said, for adults that have agency, yeah, do what you want, as to the extent that it's affecting you and not really harming
others.
others, you
Right,
know.
right.
But
Yeah, and I think that this technology, to transition and things, it doesn't supersede consciousness. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
The
right.
best thing to do is everybody has feminine and masculine energy. And I think the best thing that you could do is find constructive ways to channel that energy from within yourself and bring it outward the way that you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, taking hormone blockers and whatnot to suppress something within yourself to make you better, that's it's a temporary fix anyway.
and the way I look at it, it's also a waste of resources. Like even if it was hypothetically, theoretically possible to genuinely transmute a human being from one gender expression to the other gender expression with full functionality and everything, if that was possible, I would still view it as nothing more than a colossal waste of resources that could have been better allocated to solving some more basic fundamental problems that we have
Always.
in society that to this day have still not been adequately addressed.
Right, right, right. Like all the, it's like racism exists, but you know, people of different races don't say, well, nah, I take that back. Some actually do. I was about to
Mm,
say that you don't ever see black people try to turn white to escape racism, but I guess you kind of do. But that doesn't really solve the problem, does it? It's like that doesn't really, that's not really addressing the root cause of the problem that can be so much easier to fix and would require so much more of something positive, like embracing who you are rather than trying to change who you are from the external side, because like Sophia just said, like consciousness is still there. Like you're not really doing anything. You're just kind of like superficially putting a band-aid on stuff that doesn't really address the issue. But
Right.
yeah, all of that's very true. Did you want to look at this rap battle?
yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and play it. Let me make sure. There we go.
Robot legs, robot arms, robot cattle on my robot farm, robot head, hair, oil slick, robot eyes on my robot dick. Transhumanism, time to ascend. These human beats to their human ends. Transhumanism, time to ascend. Change my skin on a whim as a fashion trend. Change my gender, change my race, change my legs, change my face. So much power like I'm playing The Sims. Satisfy, amplify all my wildest whims.
Tribe member dead?
No big deal, no big deal. We'll rebuild with wire and steel. Upload his consciousness to the mainframe. This USB contains his brain. Wanna die at 20? Be my guest. I'll outlive your kind and all the rest. I'll throw you in a lab. I'll shoot off into space. I'll be the sun god that creates your race. Liberate our race from pain and death. Liberate my face from your caveman breath. You'll whine about tech, but it's the only way forwards. I'll end this battle in 4 words. Transhuman trance. Transhuman trance.
Ah, so nice. Dinner by firelight, family, friends, no threat in sight. We may die young, but is a good life. Although very sad when Tiger ate wife. Listen close, you can hear cries of guy who buried himself in lies. No family, no friends, just AI chatbot. Hate to say it, but AIGF? Not hot. Me love wife and children. Make life meaningful, your offspring code. Now that pitiful. What it like working all day and night for tech god. Me throw a spear at a deer, then nod off. And spend time with my community. Dance by fire with friends who are meaningful to me. Technology has done so much wrong. Do I need to send another mail bomb?
Primitivist threat level too high. Need to transcend all that is human to defeat. Post-human transformation in 3, 2, 1. Accelerate! All that is human has been replaced. The goal of your race, get outpaced. Your purposes serve them to go extinct. Your entire history a single blink. Soon there will be nothing left. Total organic life form death. Intelligence spreads across the stars. Something you lack based on your bars. Human needs are obsolete. I'll bring out the ducks you can wash your feet and replace those feet with rocket boosters. You realize you represent the losers of the progress of all of history. Culminating in the singularity where we merge into a singular being at the end of time. You see what I'm saying?
That verse sound like it made by ChatGPT. There's no soul to it. You see what I see? Why would incel tech bro want singularity? You hide self-hatred with grandiosity. You wasted whole life gooning in cube and wonder why no one want to hang out with you. We feel sad for your mind that betrays its kind. Now my whole tribe will spank your behind. Your AI wife? Very sad, very sad. Your whole life? Very sad, very sad. Your desire to kill all within your soul that makes you human. Renouncing your emotions and your kin? Not surprising. You spent whole life with no human touch, so you make sure no one else can find love. You lead us down a path of self-destruction. We think it time we do a little disruption. When solar flare comes, we'll fetch you a meal. Have real repairs done, let's watch your mind heal. As new tribe member with new community. And if not, well, your corpse will be tasty.
All right, let me pause it real quick. Yeah, because I don't want to get the channel shut down because of playing the whole thing. But yeah, that's funny.
It's accurate though.
It's accurate. I like the way that the AI guy, the transhuman side of the rap song is it's got the auto tune and like the real technological sound and
to me some of those verses went really hard. But at the same time, I really felt what the anarcho primitivism guy was saying about like that's just very sad, very sad.
Yeah,
very
and
sad,
I think
very
that
sad.
the transhumanists had it all fucking backwards, talking about humans are losers. That's like self-hatred, which is what I've been saying. Like transhumanism is like self-hatred because you don't like that you're not perfect. And rather than strive for perfection from within yourself, you want something on the outside to fix you, which is like religion. You're waiting on God or Jesus Christ to come from the clouds like the Silver Surfer and fucking save you from your suffering. Oh, wretched man that I am.
Yeah, I always say that. Like Christianity, Judaism, all that stuff is kind of like, it's like comic book spirituality. Like
that's why like people don't like me, because I tell them no one's coming to save you.
No, you don't want that. Like, we should be able to bind together as humans and work through our problems and save ourselves.
Unity.
We always have.
Unity.
We always have. Imagine we've overcome ice ages, earthquakes, worldwide floods, worldwide fires, pole
So much stuff.
shifting. We've got through it as a species. That's what made us who we are. It's kind of like
Yes.
people want to resent what their history. Like people are like, man, like I've gone through, like just in my own life, like I've gone through a lot of struggles, but I'm glad I did it because that's
You
what
wouldn't be
made
who you
me
are today,
right. I'd probably be some little pansy if I
right?
wasn't, because I knew how I started out. I knew what kind of weak person I was starting
Yes.
out. So I needed to get put through it, man. In other words, the universe was like, look, man, we're gonna make a man out of your ass at one way or the other. You know what I'm
And
saying? And
that's what I
so,
love. That's what I love about the struggle. To
yeah,
be able to look back and say, wow, this happened to me, but I'm still here. That's fucking crazy.
Mhm.
You know?
the best movies don't have just, you know how like in Jurassic Park, you watch like one of these Jurassic Park movies, right, with the dinosaur,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
always starts off with them all happy and everybody's happy and doing stuff. It's like, oh, this is going to be a great movie. There's nothing scary about this movie. By the end of the movie, half them motherfuckers got ate up. It's like, it's like you don't want a movie where it's just always just happy. There's no struggle. There's no, like,
Mhm.
what's the point of the
Mhm.
movie? Like, the movie has to entail all that shit.
Yeah, then that would be like one of those modern Disney movies where there's no real villain, and
Yeah.
the villain is like a conceptual villain. It's like a toxic perfectionism or something.
But see, that's how I feel about relationships. So in a way, I am a transhumanist because I don't fucking feel like dealing with all the bullshit that comes with relationships. I'm a runner. I'm like, fuck this shit. I don't want to do
Hey
this.
man, I'm just ready to. For me, there comes a point, an age, and it comes naturally where you get to a certain point where you're done with the lessons. You're done with the challenge. I've been there, done that. I know what's at the end of that tunnel. I know where we're going. So why do I want to go through that shit yet again? It's like I've already been there. I don't need that lesson anymore. I'm glad I took it. I'm glad I
Right.
did it. I've got two
But you don't
kids
want to
from it.
continue. You don't want to continue to repeat the same fucking lesson. And
There's
that's
no
probably,
point. Yeah, there's no
yeah.
point. Now I can rest easy. I can relax in my what they say, rest in your power. It's like you can finally come to a point where you can reflect and you can teach others your lessons, like your kids mainly and loved ones.
Yeah,
Um,
you kind of become an elder now, you're not the same
yeah,
person.
that's what that struggle was all about. And I'm glad I went through it. And I would want everyone else to have that same. It's like with my son. Like, I was talking to him the other day on the phone, because we've been having some rough patches here and there, this
Mhm.
year, right?
Mhm.
And, and I was telling him, look, man, I kind of don't. The reason why I keep wanting to bring you down to Florida or bring you into my life is not because I want to ruin your life. I just want you to see something, like there's more to life than just this little pampered life. Like when you come here, it's like you're always, different. Like you're scared. You're kind of like you don't want this life. Oh, it's like maybe if you, because I came up. This is where I was raised at, and this is where I came up. And I want to give him that same experience. Like, if not here, it doesn't have to necessarily be here or anywhere. Just do something. Like, get out of the house and go experience some shit. Go have a fight with some guys down the street. Go and
Right.
have a hard relationship with a woman. Go and do some shit. Get your ass beat a little bit. You know what I mean? Like there's something to be said about that. Like don't always run don't always run from that ass whooping. That ass whooping's there for a reason. Like
It's
I
gonna
remember
come it's gonna come anyway. You're not
it's gonna
escaping that
come.
ass.
You might as well
You're not
exact.
escaping that ass whipping.
No,
It's
that ass
coming.
whooping
And
is waiting for you around the
the
corner, and
more look, the more you wait and try to prolong it, the worse it gets,
it's
man. You
gonna get
might
worse. I'm telling you,
take that
dude.
ass whipping, man.
I used to work at a youth center, and when I was in Germany, one of my jobs to keep my ID card there was I worked at this youth center, which were these little kids that after school they'd come here because their parents were military American military.
Mhm.
So on base they had the school, and they also had the after school, and I was like an after school coach for these kids.
Mhm.
And there was one kid I was working with, and he was like a little geeky kid, and he used to get
Yeah.
beat up all the time at school, right? And then one day he told me, he goes, and I always used to tell him, man, you got to stand up for yourself, and you've got to do this and that, and you got to stop being annoying. Number one, you're kind of an annoying kid, so you have to learn why you're getting your ass beat. Number one, to stop that, like you have to grow from it, And he never really understood what I was talking about, but he said, man, one day he said, Mr. Scott. Yeah, I was like, damn, your eyes all black, and like he was all messed up.
Damn.
And I was like, damn, what happened to you? And he was like, no, I wanted to tell you this. Yeah, I got my ass beat, but that dude beat me so fucking bad at school, I finally understood. he's like, something about he didn't say anything. It's just the passion he put behind that ass whip, and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I know. Now I understand. He said, just the way he beat my ass so bad made me understand. Oh, now I get it. I need to stop being
Eureka.
such an asshole. like, yeah, exactly.
That'll help.
That helped, So he learned. That was kind of like a turning point in his little life, where he's like,
Oh my
I'm going to
goodness.
stop being that guy now. I'm like, thank you, because that's why you're getting your ass beat every day. You have no social skills, and it's sad that it has to come to that, but that's life. We all go through it, even as adults, to some extent.
You're gonna learn what's socially acceptable. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah. You're gonna learn today, motherfucker.
You're gonna learn today.
Yeah. But yeah, man, that was a pretty good.
I've had similar experiences when I was a younger chick. I would challenge dudes and fight dudes, and I would wonder, like, why do these men always try to beat my ass? Well,
Yeah.
that's because you coming at them like you some kind of dude. Like, come on now. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, is that it?
And see, the problem with the transhumanist thing is it's permanent. So it's not like you can reverse it from what they're
Yes.
talking about. Like you kill your body off, and
There's no more
you try to-
learning, growing.
you're dead. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're uploading your brain or whatever to a computer.
Princess Jasmine.
It's like, man, there's no more you
Princess
there to build
Jasmine.
on.
Alex,
Yeah.
That
Tell her to
little
stop.
Princess Jasmine.
Sit your behind down. Wait just a minute. Okay. Wait just a minute.
we're gonna have to cut it short here soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this
Might
has
have
been a really good show. I've really enjoyed it. We've covered quite a bit about our perspectives on transhumanism. Did a little reaction to some videos of what other people think. Some people with like credentials, so we're not just a bunch of fucking jerk off know nothings talking about like that.
Well, we are a bunch of jerk off know nothing.
But what I'm saying is that we're not
Okay.
just talking from a position of complete ignorance, that we're actually taking into consideration some people who
Right.
are demonstrably intelligent and
well,
Experts.
maybe we are.
accomplished in their
Maybe we
fields or
are a
whatever.
bunch of dumbasses. Who knows?
I mean, but still.
I see what you're saying, though. It's
Yeah.
like that's why we do react. That's why me and Sophia, we've always like brought on videos, so we know let our audience know this isn't just our ideas from our little vacuum. This is actually what people are actually saying. It's like
From a
gives you a
scientific-
reference.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like in
viewpoint.
this topic, we need a scientific approach, a spiritual approach,
Mhm.
different approaches to the issue, so that we have a well-rounded conversation rather than just talking out my ass, because I can do that for days.
And then
I
we've been discussing this topic for this entire week, and that's kind of what we
Mhm.
do. We propose a topic, and then we talk about it a lot, And then when we get to the show, you know, we're just kind of freestyling on what we truly believe about it, have studied about it, and we just have a conversation. It's not about preaching, it's not about
Mm-mm.
lecturing. And then whoever want to chime in can chime in. I just really wish that that guy would have came on and said what he had to say to my face, though,
Yeah, he
instead of
said it in
trying
the.
to instead of
He
trying to launch
actually.
some smear campaign.
Yeah, like he mentioned, this is the guy we're referring to. He says therapy works best with friends. They know you best. So good job and keep up the virtuous work. So I guess he's trying to claim virtue signaling on our part and being psychiatrists or psychologists. It's like, no, we're just reacting to what you said. You threw the first stone. I
Right.
could say the same thing about what you said. In fact,
So you taking up for a friend and saying, "Hey, why don't you approach my friend on the show where she can actually defend herself?" That makes you a virtual signaler now. Is that it?
right, apparently, like you know, there's I think the best thing to understand each other is to actually, you know, do that, have that confrontation, have that conversation, because you're not going to get anywhere just talking behind people's back. You know what I mean? Like saying little things here and there, little snide, smirky, little snarky remarks or whatever, just doesn't do it for me, anyways. Like I'd rather just bring it all out in the open. Be a man.
Well, at least now everyone knows that I'm an uneducated, typical
Oh my goodness.
black woman. Okay,
Yeah,
for everyone to know, because Al had to let us know. You know.
yeah. He
Thanks
had to
for
let the world know.
thanks
Thanks,
for
Al.
thanks a lot for introducing me.
Such a nice guy.
Yes, I feel so famous now.
Yeah, he's
People
he's looking
finally
out
know
for you.
me.
He's
People
looking out
finally
for
know.
you.
People finally know who I truly am.
That's right. And the funny thing is that when we first started doing this stuff, about a year ago, uh, we used to get all this kind of stuff about, oh, stay away from Sophia because she's gonna do something to me. I don't know what happened, but I don't know why. Then on the other side, I was part of these other groups, and they were blaming me because they liked me at first, like, because I'd always mod on their different channels, atheist channels or whatever, skeptic channels. So they liked me, and then they saw that I was doing my own show. They were like, oh, great, we get to watch Scott doing his own show now, awesome. And then they tuned in and they saw it was me and Sophia talking about conservatism, and they're like, what, you're a conservative, what? And so they were like, "Oh, and you've got a woman of color? That's
Oh my
you you
God.
mean you mean you've brainwashed a woman of color to go along with this white trash, toxic masculinity type stuff?" And I lost
Mhm.
all those friends. They were like, "Well, you're blocked." Boom.
Well, they weren't
Like
Man,
friends.
they weren't
yeah.
friends because they
I
And
didn't
mean,
try
me
to.
and me and Scott, we've had our own falling out and we got some history and I
Yeah.
talked hella shit to him and was like,
Mhm.
whatever, dude. And we were able to come back around and I was able to say, Scott, I was kind of wrong. And we talked it out and we've been like best friends ever since. And I don't see that changing ever.
Ever, ever,
So
ever, ever, and it
no.
never will. And the thing is that um, the only reason we kind of changed format was because I just couldn't really get with it. I'm kind of like a weird person. Like I'm somebody who I can't really be pigeonholed in anything. Like I
mm,
try, sometimes I try. Like I tried religion, I tried atheism, I tried conservatism, I even tried liberalism at one point, and I could never really settle down with one identity like that. So I'm just all over the place. So what I kind of realize about myself is I'm more an agnostic in the sense that I admit that I don't know everything and I'm just open to
mhm,
learn, but
Yeah.
at the same time I don't want to really commit to one political ideology or religious ideology because that they always make it to where you can't really question, and you can't really
Yeah,
think
everything's
out the
just too
box.
radical now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that channel at that time was becoming a little bit radical because it's like we ran
Hmm.
out of shit to talk about because it's like, okay, if we stay within this paradigm that's very limited, and then we can only talk about certain, talking points, and it became very limiting, and
Yeah,
I
because
do,
like it got to a point where like I think what did it for me really when my eyes kind of got open and I started really losing gas on that stuff, man, was we got to a point where we were just talking about Malcolm X, and we were like really seeing the good part of Malcolm X and
the
how it was
value of
really,
him,
yeah, and it was value, it was resonating with the
and
things
we
we were
we were
already
attacked so bad about it.
so bad. And I was like, and then I
Mhm.
was thinking, oh, so when you're a conservative, it became very clear
You
that's
cannot like
not
Malcolm
part of that.
X.
Right. So
Yeah,
you're not really, and someone had sat me down and explained, look, if you're a conservative, you really can't be consistent with that because of this part and that part. And if you think about
Mm,
conservatism,
mm.
they talk about this and that. And I was like, well, then I'm not really a conservative. So it became like
right.
people trying to tell me, well, you're not, you're a fake conservative. And what are you guys really doing? What are y'all even talking about? Because you're
Mm.
not talking about,
Well, I guess I'm not a
according to
conservative
them.
then. I'm an
Yeah. So I'm
independent
like, right,
because
right,
you pushed me out of the group. You said my
right.
ideas don't conform, so I guess I just don't conform.
Yeah, so we
Exactly.
just
And
kind of we just kind of discovered that for people like Scott and myself, that was just getting too limited. And the
mm-hmm,
only reason that I didn't know what was going on in Scott's mind, and he
mm-hmm.
didn't really communicate that to me. So since
Right. That was
all
my part.
since
That was
since
my
all the
problem too. Cause I was trying
yeah,
to figure it out myself. I was like,
right.
I was
He was
not
still
really,
figuring.
I was like, am I didn't know what was going on. So then
Mm,
I
mm.
finally told her, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe the best thing that I probably should have done upon retrospect is I should say, let's just tweak our channel out a little bit. Let's do more like what we're
Right.
doing now.
But
Like,
see, me, I noticed the change, and at first he just kind of denied it, and I'm like,
mm-hmm.
no, you acting funny, you moving funny. What's up?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's a
Yeah.
thing that people say about like politicians, about media personalities, and maybe just like regular individuals. They might say, "Oh, you're flip flopping or whatever,"
Yeah,
Right, right.
which
It's yeah,
I
yeah,
said that.
yeah,
I said
yeah.
that. I did.
flip
I did.
And
flopping
see,
flip
that's I
flopping
didn't
is
want
when
to
you're
come
being
off that way. That's the whole
is when you're
thing.
being inconsistent. But there is another side of that. Some people, people have a right to, with new information, actually change their mind.
Well, that wasn't the thing.
You
That
know,
wasn't the problem. It's just that I didn't know what was going on
She didn't
because
really know.
and
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 the
and
good
we
thing
all go
about
through
Sophia,
awkward
the
the
great
transitional
thing
thing,
is,
periods.
the thing is, Alex, what you got to understand,
Yeah.
we already resolved this, and we
Hmm.
both admitted
Hmm.
both of
yeah,
our,
Hmm.
yeah, we
flaws.
had our
The thing
problems
is,
on each side.
the,
Yep.
the thing is that he couldn't really articulate it right yet because he was still
Hmm.
like
In
in the
that
awkward.
awkward
Mm-hmm.
transitional
Yeah,
period.
Yep. That
but me,
transition.
Hmm.
noticing the physical change when it came to his behavior,
Mm-hmm.
it made me lash out and feel some kind of way. But that's
Yep.
also kind of to be expected because
Yep.
me and him had such a good routine and it was so reliable that when it switched up, that made me feel insecure. So he did
Right.
also understand that. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
we were able to come back together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I really I didn't really want to say let's not do because I didn't want to be that flip flopper. Like I was like, man, if I
Mm.
tell somebody like I got us this far in this shit and I've committed this much, now I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm not into
I'm
it no more.
jumping ship.
Like yeah, I'm gone, man. I'm out. Like it's
I was
like
like,
that's not.
huh? What? No. You
I
gonna
already
leave me
knew that
here?
ain't cool. Yeah, that's
And
like that ain't cool.
you gonna let me get bombed by all these radical leftists who's making death
Right.
threats? No, Scott, you going
Fuck
down with
that.
me.
Exactly. So, now upon retrospect, I knew the issue was very simple for me to resolve. All I had to do was tell Sophia how I felt, and then let's
Yes.
talk about how we can take that same show and just tweak it a little bit. That's all it
Right.
took.
That's all
Like
it
what we're
took.
doing now. Like we don't have to do anything. Like I was just
Yeah,
under this
we don't have
pressure.
to
Like
commit
But we
ourselves
was
to
about
a
we was
certain
about
political
it for a little
ideology.
yeah,
while.
man, we was in, boy. We were like,
And I
man,
was like,
screw it. Like
I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, you gonna find out when I walk my ass to court.
okay, man, yeah. But that's what it is. That's hey, that's human growth. That's humanity in motion.
Yes.
That's the pain, the
Perfect
growing pains.
example.
Yeah, good example of why we don't want to do that. There's no
And
easy way out.
now we're best friends.
Yep, back on track again. So yeah, so
Yep.
let's end it here. I think we've had a great session, and
Yeah.
we'll come up with another topic for next
Yep.
weekend, and we'll do it again.
I hope
Sounds
that
good.
the technology worked better today.
Yeah, I think it did. Thanks to technology.
Yes.
while we're shitting on science and technology. All right,
You
guys.
hypocrites.
You hypocrites. All right, we're gonna
All
end it
right.
here. Thanks everybody for joining, and if most people will probably see it on the replays, but leave some comments. Let us know. Like and subscribe to the channel. We're gonna build it up again, and we're gonna make it really good. We're already improving our production quality a little bit. We've got the sound. Sophia found a solution for that on that end, and
Yep.
I'm just stuck in
so I
this
hope it
room, so you're
sounded better
seeing
this
this little.
time.
Yeah, I'll get a better
Help
look.
us
But
grow. Help us grow the channel.
that's right. Help us grow, and please call in. Whenever we have these call-ins, it really helps the show and helps people interact, and we can make it more interesting. So definitely. But yeah, we're gonna catch up, guys, and I appreciate it again. So we'll catch up later.
All right. See you next time.
All right.
Yeah, take it easy, Scott.
All right, Alex. You guys be good.